All right. Do this. I think we're
live.
we're live. We're live, right?
Well, I see a clock in your top left-hand corner that looks like it's counting down there.
Yeah, we're live and we're streaming everywhere, buddy.
Wow.
Safe. All right, first time. Welcome back, Kev.
Thank
Thanks for joining me. Interesting, interesting time. We're jumping on. First of all, good seeing you the other day. Could have done this live from the couch with a scotch.
Yeah.
We could
Probably
have done
wasn't
it.
the best of ideas.
It would have been a different live for sure. There might have been some swear words and
Yeah.
stuff going on, but certainly thanks for coming back. I think we're real interesting time here. We're in the leadership, race in Canada. Auto tariffs yesterday announced.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to be announced on April 2nd, if anything's going to be announced April 2nd. We have Bank of Canada lowering rates, but would have not lowered rates this month if it wasn't for these tariffs, this threatening of tariffs, because inflation is still really kind of sticky. So it's really cool time. I'm glad you're on with us. I wanted to just pick your brain and see what you're seeing on your side and what I'm seeing on my side and what your thoughts are going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely challenging times for people to navigate through, right?
Yeah. So you're looking at Coras every day, which are short-term interest rates. Like
Mm-hmm.
they must be. I've talked to another friend of mine who's trading them today. They must be jumping all over the place. We've got heated up inflation, I guess, and we've got maybe threat of deflation. I don't know.
Deflation? I don't think there's too much.
Well, I mean, our economy could really collapse at some point if he follows through with this, right? Like with all the tariffs that he's threatened. So I don't know. You tell me what you're seeing on your side.
Well, I mean, I think that the conversation around tariffs is really, really dumbed down by the media to begin with, in that it's such a nuanced and difficult conversation because it's industry specific. It's very difficult to make these broad sweeping statements about how tariffs are going to affect Canada and the United States unless you're specifically speaking about the sectors themselves, right? Because for some sectors it's very consequential, for others it's not. There's a lot of moving parts and whatnot. So I think like Jerome Powell in his last press conference last week at the Fed meeting said it, and Macklin said it the week before, that it's a very, very difficult topic to get your head around in terms of the effects of it, right? And the way that it works its way through an economy. So the media, throws out these blanket statements. It's going to do this, it's going to do that, when in fact, we have to sort of wait and see, right?
Nobody really knows, right? Nobody knows.
No, I mean, we know it's definitely, the one thing we know is that it's inflationary because the government themselves are putting a 25% tariff or tax on goods. So if you raise if you raise the price of a good by 25%, the consumer, whether the importer or the exporter absorbs some of that 25%, the consumer is going to have to take on some of it themselves. So we know it's inflationary. There's no question about that, right?
Yeah.
So if the Canadian economy, suffers greatly from tariffs, it would not likely be in a deflationary environment. It would be in the worst case scenario where it's a stagflationary environment, where your economic growth is slowed down, maybe even goes negative, and prices go up.
Right. So what are you like?
Again, just to be clear though, that depends on what you're talking about. So, like for example, if we're taxing American, I don't know, liquor, for example, that's inflationary for us if you're buying American liquor.
Right.
But it's not inflationary on alcohol prices if you're buying Canadian goods, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's really, you have to have these conversations, in sort of little microcosms of the industries you're talking about.
Right. So overall, I mean, you're staring at a screen all day. We can talk about my
Yeah.
industry for
Yeah.
sure, but you're staring in front of a screen all day, trying to make. I know you're more short term than anything else, but
Mhm.
I think still you're trying to keep an eye on what's happening long term. What's the market kind of telling you? I know Tiff McClem said recently that he wouldn't be lowering rates, all
Yeah.
things being equal, but he's got to give us a little bit of a cushion just in case,
Yeah.
worse stuff, happens. But inflation could make rates go up in a slow growth environment, right?
Yeah. I mean, the bank, yeah. So the markets are obviously pricing in continued lowering of rates by the Bank of Canada.
Are they still like
Yeah, they're pricing in. They're
what's
pricing.
April? What's April priced in now?
April's priced in at about a 50% chance of a move, and as you go down the curve, you know, probably by the end of the year. So the Decembers are trading at a 3.33 rate. So they're pricing in a bit more than like sort of two two more quarter point moves, I would say,
Between now and December.
between now and December. Yeah.
Right.
But honestly, that is such a moving target for the markets.
Right.
It's not like anytime Trump talks tariffs, the markets will price that the Bank of Canada will be more aggressive in easing, and anytime he talks down markets, it goes the other way, and it's really bouncing all over the place. Not just Canadian markets, European markets, U.S. markets. So
Right.
I think that the overall sort of aggregate market, all markets, place that everyone is in is just a state of uncertainty where you just don't know. You know, you never know with that administration what they're going to say, when they're going to say it, which is also
Yeah,
problematic.
for sure.
It's not only what they say; it's when they say it. Like last night, he sent out a tweet at 2 a.m. At 1:50 in the morning, he sent out a tweet saying that if Canada wants to create trade partnerships with the European Union, that the U.S. would push back with heavier tariffs against that. But this is a tweet at 1:50 a.m.
Right.
So
Right.
it's very difficult to sort of get for anyone in any asset class, whatever you're trading, to get your head around what policy is. I don't even know. I'm not even sure they know what their policy is.
Yeah, I would suggest I would second. I would suggest that even his Commerce Secretary, Treasury Secretary, don't know what he's going to say at between 1:50 in the morning and 8 o'clock the next morning.
Exactly.
Right? it's it's so you're more short term, but if you had to guess, like, are you thinking rates are going lower? Or you think they're going to stay the same? Like how are you positioning yourself? And then we can maybe get into our federal election here and
Yeah.
whether there'd be a
Um,
different policy
I
response.
think I think that in uh, that I think that there's two stories. There's Canada's story and there's the U.S. story. So I'm assuming that your viewers are more interested in the Canadian side.
Yeah, for
Canada
sure.
is Canada. The bank, now is at 2.75.
Yeah,
Their overnight rate. They've said that their neutral rate is we're getting close to their neutral rate, where
very close.
they're
Yeah,
neither stimulative nor nor a hindrance to economic growth. So I think that if they do continue to ease, that they're somewhere in the area of 50 to 75 basis points away from where they would really sort of want to stop and leave
right.
there. And I think that anything lower than that would be in almost like an emergency type of situation,
That's yeah.
where
That's
economic growth is really, really crushed. So in
right.
Canada, I think the markets are pricing it fairly well here. I don't think that inflation will stop Macklin from easing.
No,
I think he showed his hand a long time ago where he was easing into sticky inflation. You know,
right.
Like the bank's mandate, the Bank of Canada mandate is that they keep inflation between 2 and 3%, right?
Right.
He started easing rates while we were above the 3% target.
Right. But we did have some readings that were below like one and a half.
But they were monthly readings. They were monthly
Yeah.
readings. And if you look back at the base, if you look back at the full 12 months, we were never really, when he started easing, we were never below 3, And now we're stuck somewhere between 2 and 3, So
Right.
So I don't think that he will necessarily, if we have inflation with low economic growth, I'm not sure that he's going to, that's going to stop him from easing rates. I think there's a lot of pressure on him with our housing market to ease rates. So I think that's what he'll do. Maybe 2 more eases this year,
Right. But neutral is where we're at, to slightly lower, or where we're at today, all things being equal. Now it's just like, who knows, right?
I mean, that's even the central bankers themselves. They're not sure exactly what the neutral rate is.
Right.
It's way above my pay grade to tell you what the neutral rate is. But in 2020 and 2021, the central banks had 0% rates. The Bank of Canada's rate was at 0%, and the Fed was not far behind. They were at like 50 basis points. So I think they look back on that time and they say, okay, we were probably super accommodative at those levels and not neutral.
Right.
So is the neutral rate 1%, 1.5%, 2%? I don't know. But I think that from the rhetoric coming out of the bank over the last, year to year and a half, is that it sounds like around 2%, somewhere in that area, is what they think is neutral,
Right.
But, I don't know.
We don't know. It's unprecedented. I mean, we went through COVID.
That's exactly the thing. I think that's the thing that people need to understand, is that we're living through times where a lot of the stuff that's going on from a fiscal level, like government spending, for sure, we've never seen before. We never saw an extended period of 0 to negative interest rates. So all of these, really anomalous economic, external exogenous things that the governments and the central banks have done, they're playing themselves out in ways that they're hard to interpret because we don't really know. We don't have any precedent.
We don't. So moving on from kind of unprecedented time where we can maybe price things in the markets, do you feel that there's going to be, I want to talk a little bit about this leadership race that's going to culminate at the end of April, but do you feel that there's one side or the other is going to help, hinder? You've seen a policy response, like policies from either that will be any different, that might be good or bad. Do you have any opinions on this race? We've got a former central banker running, for the Liberals, but he's still got 87% of the old Liberals as part of his cabinet and trusted advisors. And then we've got a guy that, I don't know, is he like Trump? Is he not like Trump? But he's a little bit more maybe conservative. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you mean like with respect to
markets and a little bit of, maybe he'll be a little bit more fiscally responsible. I don't know. Maybe he'll open up
it's hard to believe that. It's hard to believe that the Liberal Party is going to be fiscally responsible. That's
hard to believe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the data would suggest that that's a bit of a reach. Will Poilievre be more fiscally responsible? I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I think that we're all working in a paradigm where it'll either be the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party.
Right.
I think
we were trading when Carney was our Bank of Canada governor.
Yeah, but Carney also governed during a time of low rates.
He didn't have to do much. Yeah.
I don't really think that either one of them. I think that both of them can have a very different impact. I just don't know. I think I don't know what that might be. The one thing that comes to mind is I would think that the Conservatives would be very friendly to the Western provinces and oil production. And so I think that could be economically quite stimulative for our economy if we had a friendlier government in Ottawa that to, um, the
Right.
fossil fuel sector, if you will.
Sure.
Carney's also a very, very well known advocate of climate and
Yeah.
and carbon reduction and this and that. And I'm not commenting on whether one's good and one's bad, but one is very pro growth,
Yeah.
economic growth, and one is not.
Yes. For sure.
Carney seems to be toning down.
Yeah.
He seems to be walking away a little bit from who he was.
Very hard for me to trust, as much as his resume dictates that maybe he's the right guy. It's hard to walk away from 4 years of him, net zero and
Yeah,
punishing companies that
yeah,
invest in fossil fuels, and
yeah.
all of a sudden he's going to build pipelines and LNG plants and
Right.
stuff. And
Yeah,
Guilbeault is still part
yeah,
of his inner circle, who is definitely not, um, pipeline,
yeah, yeah,
pipeline. So that makes it hard for me to trust,
yeah.
what Carney says. But I mean, obviously he's got the resume to,
Yeah, I think your sentiment is one that is probably shared by most Canadians, is that they see, just with respect to the climate stance and stuff like that,
Mhm.
they see Carney as the guy who just saw Trudeau get scorched for that kind of stuff. And so
Right.
he's walking as far away that he can of that. But, he kind of showed his colors during during the time when that was a fashionable position to take.
For sure. For sure. So you're in Quebec. I wanted to get to this pipeline stuff. I mean, you're in Quebec. Um, it's a tough, I would have said 3 months ago, like, Poilievre's going to walk all over this, win easily. Carney comes in, we turf Trudeau, or they turf Trudeau. Now you've got Blanchette, who wants to is all about Quebec, and now we've got an election that's based on Canadian sovereignty and all that. Like, how do you think both of these guys will deal with Quebec? Because while the population may want pipelines, they
I
don't.
don't know.
They
I
don't
mean,
know. Like,
that sovereignty question has been around before you and I were born.
yeah,
It
but it's
never
not
goes.
an important. Obviously, this is the one election that's not. This is like Blanchette loses any kind of, I guess, like, he can't really campaign on that, because we're worried about Canada as a whole, right? So
Yeah,
does Polyev ram a pipeline through his throat and say we have no choice but to do this? And Carney seems to say yes in the West, but maybe if Quebec wants it in the East, like, he has two tones to his
yeah.
conversation. Like,
I don't know.
like
I don't know. I honestly, like, I don't follow the politics enough to do that. And also, in my experience as a market trader in Canada for over 30 years, Canadian politics plays a very small role in how,
yeah,
in my opinion, on how the capital markets react.
right,
Just
right,
because our governments traditionally have tended to be more, center, and policy was really not. I mean, traditionally, policy didn't have these huge economic, effects. I
right.
think now with the tariffs, and that we find ourselves in this potential trade war that's originated from the U.S., that it will be very important the type of leader we have and how they can handle the Trump administration's push
Well,
on.
yeah, that's why it's different than any election I can remember, in the sense that we've got a guy on the other side that's there for 4 years. He's America first, clearly doesn't give a
Yeah,
shit about
yeah,
any other country.
yeah,
And the Democrats are so far in the toilet that I don't see them winning in 4 years either. So maybe you got another guy that's an offshoot of Trump that comes in. So we've got 8 years of dealing maybe with America first, and we've got to elect a prime minister here that really changes our economy. Like,
yeah, yeah.
we've got to,
I think that's why, in my opinion, I think that's why Carney has crept up in the polls, and a few polls now actually have him leading, is that I think again, it's just completely speculative, but that's the nature of my business, is that I think that Canadians look at him as more of a statesman, someone who runs the Bank of England, is a guy who has been around circles of, real powerful world leaders, and knows how to handle himself, and knows how to negotiate, uh, uh, properly, and so I think that Canadians see him as a better person to negotiate with Donald Trump than Polyev, who, although he has like a lot of political experience as an MP, it kind of stops there. He doesn't have any experience. He doesn't have much of a record of ever, really being able to do this, right? And it does take a certain type of character to deal with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anybody.
I'm not saying I don't think that Polyev is necessarily going to do a bad job and Carney's going to do a good job. I don't know, but I think that for a lot of Canadians, they feel safer maybe with Carney. Dealing just with respect to dealing with Trump. But I don't know. I might be way off. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we're going to know pretty soon. It's again, we come back to this word unprecedented, and
It's,
no idea
it's either that or or really, when Trudeau, prior to Trudeau resigning, he was in his, his polling numbers were horrible. He was like, rated the worst prime minister ever for so long. Then it would suggest that if the Liberals win this election, even in a minority government, it would basically mean that Canadians just really dislike Justin Trudeau and not the Liberal brand,
right,
and not the Liberal Party, which could very well be true.
It could very well happen. I mean, it's definitely listen. It's definitely a testament to the Liberal brand.
I think either way, though. I think either way that and we'll never know. But we have to hope as Canadians. I think the biggest threat to us right now is we have to think of, how will the new prime minister deal with Donald Trump, and I personally, I love the way Doug Ford dealt with the tariff things a few weeks ago, and the American media tries to spin it in some weird way that that Donald Trump, the master negotiator, got his way. When in fact, if you look at it, he completely folded and acquiesced when Ford started to start nailing them with tariffs. And when you look at it, on February 23rd, Donald Trump announced 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. By the end of February 3rd, that very day, there were no more tariffs.
Right.
Then they come back in version 2, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks later, and Trump and Doug Ford and starts pushing hard against it, hitting them with tariffs, and Trump completely folded because we don't have any. I mean, the auto tariffs were just announced yesterday, but before yesterday, we had no tariffs on us. So to me, it's like Trump is kind of like the bully in all this, and
of course,
and when leaders push back on them, if they have the leverage to push back on them, that's the key. That's the kind of sort of negotiating tactic you need with him.
Right. So how do you come to grips where we have two provincial leaders kind of outspoken, one in Daniel Smith and one in Doug Ford, who are kind of also negotiating? I guess it's because we have a vacuum here. Nobody's really negotiating with them other than those two, because
also
the race,
also prior to, I mean, the Liberals don't have, I don't think they have one member of Parliament, west of Ontario, all the way to the city of Vancouver. It's solid conservative ground out there. That all the people out there have felt that the Liberals have completely abandoned them. So good for Daniel Smith for advocating for her people in her province, because Justin Trudeau certainly was not advocating for Alberta.
No, that's for sure. He never has. It's
and Legault is very silent on everything. I think he's wise, and he's sort of taking a wait and see approach.
Yeah. Right. So
because Hydro Quebec wields a heavy hand in the amount of utilities that electricity that they sell to the Northeast.
Right. Right. So we
Even
could.
more
I mean,
so than Ontario sells to those Midwestern
right.
states.
But he never said anything about
He
electricity.
never said a thing.
Right.
He never said a thing. He's wisely kept quiet. I mean, he might have said a few very innocuous type of comments, but nothing. Nothing like Doug Ford.
Right. So how do we get? I mean, this is probably past our pay grade for sure. We'll talk about how this maybe affects mortgage rates, but how do we get everybody in every province on Team Canada to deal with this threat? Because it seems to me like we've got a new paradigm here, and we've got to be our own self-sufficient country and trade amongst ourselves and trade with Europeans and trade with the Asians and trade with the South
I don't
Americans.
think I agree with Macklin when he said this is not an interest rate. This is not a Bank of Canada.
No, can't really help, right?
You can't help. I mean, you in a tariff war, he said the only thing the interest rates can really do is deal with inflation and inflationary stuff and I mean, you could help. If we go into a recession, you can help homeowners by lowering mortgage rates and stuff like that. But on aggregate, it's hard to fight 25% tariffs or more with 25 basis point increases or decreases in overnight lending to banks.
Right.
It's like
doesn't
move
help.
the needle, So
doesn't,
I think we just have to hope and pray that that cooler heads will prevail and well, really, it's in Trump's hands, right? How much does he want to push?
Do you have any thoughts on what his end goal is? Like just bring all the manufacturing back to the U.S. and screw everybody else, and that's it.
I don't know. I think that he in his head, it's hard to believe, but I think he actually just does not have a good grasp of how tariffs are really inflationary on your own people. More than anyone, you victimize your own people more than anyone. And really, like a tariff, the purpose of a tariff is to try to get your own country to manufacture something that they're not, right?
Yeah,
so it's like,
for sure.
Like it kind of makes sense. Like if you're taxing a Chinese company that's making iPhone parts, that could be made in the US, well, then the tariff is good if it forces it, But when you're taxing and putting tariffs on things that you'll never make in your own country, like the tariffs on aluminum, the US, they import 70% of their aluminum from Canada and a lot from Quebec, right? Because aluminum production, the biggest input cost in aluminum production is electricity, which we have super cheap here, right?
Right.
So you're taxing aluminum, you're tariffing aluminum, which is going to raise the prices on your own importers and eventually your public. But there's no alternative for them to make their own aluminum.
No.
I mean, that's not just something that you wake up one day and say, oh, let's start making aluminum, right? So I think that there's a lot of his policy that it's hard to believe that they don't think it through.
And he's buying it in Canadian dollars, right?
Unless the thing that makes the most sense to me is that there's an ultimate, arterial motive to what he's doing that we don't understand. Because
I think he's playing chess.
I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
The vision of Donald Trump and chess is not congruent to the thing.
Oh, we got a couple of comments.
It's hard to believe. Like there must be something else much bigger going on that we don't see. And it's just hard to believe some of the stuff that he's tariffing that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't. We got John Leonard. It's going to be a blue landslide. Okay, we'll see. And we got Tex, old floor guy. Tex.
Oh yeah, Tex.
Nice. Hope you're doing well, buddy. Tex used to trade with us on the floor.
60 TX.
60 TX. Yes, I think I worked for both you and Tex at the same time.
What's that?
I think it was a runner for both you and Tex, maybe at the same time.
Possibly.
Yeah. Long time ago.
Yeah.
We all had less.
hopefully they'll work things out. Cooler heads will prevail, and you know, I mean, what frightens me the most, and your viewers or whoever's watching this, it looks like we have only two people watching, but it's that he actually has his eyes on our natural resources,
For
and
sure.
this is just some type of play for an ultimate bigger move towards getting his hands on our abundant natural resources.
For sure. Listen, if you listen, we're not going to get too far into this because now it's like Bree
Yeah.
Bart and all this kind of stuff. But if you actually listen to Steve Bannon talking about the North, that's why they're going after Greenland, and the North is very strategic, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously our minerals and our stuff like that. I wonder down the road we become a union like the European Union, maybe, where it just becomes more of a free flow
Yeah.
of trade, and where we're not part of their country, but we're trading very easily with them. I find that could take forever because we don't even trade freely amongst ourselves in
Mm-hmm.
Canada,
Mm-hmm.
which is first and foremost probably something we have to take care of. But
Yeah.
I wonder if it's
At the end of the day, it's all economics, right? It's like the old saying, just follow the money. You know, Trump is, wants to reduce their budgetary deficit and their, sovereign debt. Maybe he's looking at his tariffs and saying this is a good way to do it. He is going to.
I'm going to buy a gold card, buddy. $5 million gold card.
It
Get
was funny about
naturalized.
that suggestion that he has where where good, amazing people can come and buy a U.S. citizenship for $5 million. I thought to myself, what about like American citizens that have that citizenship? Can they like trade theirs for $5 million?
Yeah.
They can create a market and
We'll
actually
leave. We'll leave. We'll sell you
American.
our citizenship. Yeah, maybe we could start a futures market on that.
That's it. We'll start a
We
futures
get
market.
Tex. Tex will join us. We'll create a pit.
Yeah, Tex could be our market maker.
He's gonna be our market maker. You got one too. You can maybe trade yours in.
Yeah,
You and Anya, 10 million buckies,
that's
right?
it. That's it.
Right. So
That's
I
it.
don't know. Like, it's a good
He's going to
discussion.
shrink GDP too because of the cuts to the government, which is, government spending is one of the four components of GDP. So that's going to be cut down.
Yeah.
And also exports and imports are part of GDP too. So that's going to all play in.
Yeah.
Tex is in. He's going to be a
Tex
market.
is in. There, we got 3 people in the pit. We started up. We'll get KB. He's downtown.
Yeah.
We'll call.
Yeah.
You saw him recently. We'll get KB
Yes.
in, and
Yeah.
James is. We'll get James.
We'll make markets on American citizenship gold cards.
The gold card. Yeah, for sure.
There'd probably be more interest in Canadian citizenship cards.
Yeah, maybe we could sell those for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what's his name? Carney's guy. One of his insiders wants 100 million people by 2100 in Canada.
2100.
One of Wiseman, I can't remember what his first name is. Wiseman was part of their immigration.
Right.
In the background, we've obviously had a ton of immigration in Canada, good or bad. I'm not going to comment on it, but one of the inner circle of Carney has a philosophy of having 100 million people in Canada by 2100.
Well, if they just all they have to do is leave Justin Trudeau in there, it would have been done in 5 years.
Yeah, true that. So back to, I guess, my business. I mean, so for people watching or people who are going to watch later on, or we really don't know going forward. We're kind of at the neutral rate. We're within.
Yeah. What are mortgage rates now?
Well, I don't know. Variable rate is probably low 4s, 4.25, 4, give or take. Fixed rates are very similar, 4%. I've always thought that we might get to 3.5, and that, on a fixed rate or a variable rate, and that might be neutral.
Has the whole market refied from, like, if you looked at the day when mortgage rates in Canada were at their lowest, whenever, I guess
they're all coming up. I've got one of those.
So that would have been like the beginning of
2020.
2021.
2020, around this time in 2020, because COVID was March,
Well,
right?
2021 they would have been the lowest, right?
So between end of 2020, but the purchase boom happened May 2020 to end of 2021. So there's a significant amount of people coming up for renewal
Right.
in the next year and a half or 2 years. We're basically start of the year. We're first quarter of 2025. And they're obviously not in for the shock that they would have been last year because rates have come down significantly. I think the average jump might be only a couple $100, but people, um, there are people coming off 1.5% or 1.6%, not many fixed rates, and are going to be switching to, let's say, 3.5% fixed rates. Let's say by the time we get to maybe if we go, if neutral is 2%, as you say, I don't know if that's the case, but if neutral is 2%, we're probably another 50 bips on maybe fixed rates. The problem with fixed rates is they don't go down if we have some inflation pressure, right? Bond yields don't drop, so the variable rate will drop a bit, and then hopefully you can lock into a fixed. What we're telling clients now, we have been for the last 6 months, is take a variable rate. The Bank of Canada is still dropping. At some point in time, you can switch into a fixed rate, free of charge, and hopefully they go down a little bit more. They may not, because we still have these inflation pressures, but they may. And if they do, then you lock in at a good,
So you look at when you're looking at mortgage rates, you're looking at the 5-year as your benchmark.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
So 5 years are 273, and mortgage rates are what?
Like 4%. It's usually like a buck and a quarter, kind of like
125 basis points over 5
It's usually give or take that. Some people use, like, I know you've talked to Rob McClister before.
Yeah, Rob's a really good guy.
Yeah, he follows. He's a very good guy. He knows his stuff. He follows the 4-year swap market, which kind of prices in 5 years pretty well.
He's the you ever watched the Fed press conferences with Jerome Powell? They always put this guy Michael McKee from Bloomberg as the last guy, because he always asks the most difficult question. And Rob, to me, is that guy at the Bank of Canada conferences. Like,
it's asking the one question. It's actually
always on my phone, and he asks like what I find is the challenging, good question to ask.
Yeah, he's good. He's got a good newsletter. I subscribe to it. Helps us brokers quite a bit. He's got some cool tools on there that we help clients with. He knows his stuff, but he's on his tools he's using 4-year swaps to price things in. When typically I'm quoting rates, I'm quoting 5 years. We did 3 years. Also in 2022, a lot of those. 2023, so those will come up. They were pretty cheap too. Those will come up in 2027, 2028 a little bit. So the next 4 years of refi stuff or switch stuff, there's going to be a lot of business for brokers out there.
Have the Canadian banks at all altered have they tightened up lending?
Yes.
They have.
So I shouldn't say all of them. I don't want to brush every bank with that, but Big Blue recently came out with a list of 10 kind of 10 industries or 10 sub industries where they're starting to look a little bit more diligently at the documents and how you're making your money. It's the first time since COVID that we've had that. During COVID, we had people getting approved for mortgages with job letters, and by time of closing they were asking for a second job letter to make sure they still had a job. But Big Blue here is starting to limit mortgages to certain industries or tightening the ratio requirements for certain industries. I haven't seen it yet from any other bank. Usually, when one does, sometimes others, will follow suit. I'm hoping that's not the case, and right now it's more self-employed than it is, employed, but it may
What?
happen.
Yeah. Have you noticed any like Bank of Canada started to buy CMHC backed? They did start to do some mortgage buying.
Hmm. It
Maybe
came back to the market, right, a bit.
I don't know if they've ever done it before. It was like a new program. I quickly read about it, but they were buying, um, I guess, mortgage backed bonds or securities from CMHC. Did you see any? Did that help at all in depressing
Nothing,
rates or nothing?
nothing,
You didn't notice
nothing.
any?
The insured market, to me, I mean, they obviously they've come in and loosened it a bit because the threshold in the insured space was $1 million, and now they've loosened some rules. It's the first time in a long time, 5 years maybe. Maybe I'm wrong. Where there was actually some loosening of the rules because they tightened rules, forever and
Right,
ever.
right.
Um, but I haven't really noticed it. Condo market. Um, I think they're pushing CMHC still, multi-res, multi-family stuff for
Yeah,
rentals. But now we're at a point where there's a lot of rentals. Rental market's getting saturated a bit.
yeah. I just
It's an
sorry,
interesting,
I just picked it up here. So
right.
the government of Canada
Right.
intends to purchase 50% of the fixed rate Canada mortgage bond issuance over the 2025 calendar year. And they have like a bunch of them here. I guess these are bonds, I guess, that are put out by the Bank of Canada that they then buy. I don't know. I have to look at it.
Maybe that's something we talk about next time.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know how much of a. I know the Fed was a buyer um, of Fannie and Freddie, Fannie Mae and Freddie
Yeah.
Mac stuff during the financial crisis and thereafter. But I'm not sure that's similar to this type of program.
No, I'm pretty sure they stepped away from the market for a bit and they've come back a little
Mhm.
bit with this new program.
Yeah,
Again, we can talk about it next time. We'll do a little bit more research, but
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah. Well, it's. I hope on aggregate people are, that these lower rates have, eased the burden a bit on people.
they're definitely going to ease the burden. The issue that we're seeing um, is that it's not a it's not so bad. It's not as bad as I thought it might be, but banks are being very hungry because there's not a lot of new issuance. Banks are being very hungry on renewals. So that's good for the consumer, not great for us as brokers. We're not winning many renewals, but we're helping clients either way. Like we'll point them back to the bank, but they're being very, very hungry on renewing. And it's tough to move. Some people, it's actually tough to move because um, LTVs are not there. Like they're just maybe not have the equity that they once thought they had. That's where it's become a little bit more challenging in the
Right,
space. Can't your house is not a piggy bank, at least in Ontario.
right,
It's not a piggy bank anymore. So, renewing doesn't help that. Refining does. Sometimes people don't have the equity in their home to refi everything they want to refi. And then there is a real bloodbath in the condo space, where a lot of buildings or a lot of rentals out there, and then some buildings are appraising it lower than
is that a
purchase.
Toronto thing or is that a national?
It's a Toronto thing. I think Vancouver maybe has a little bit of it. I like eventually they get all soaked up, but
Any speculative space in the
it's
market?
Toronto, Vancouver. I think there's a lot of speculation in Calgary. A lot of speculation in Calgary. Toronto investors and sure investors out west are flocking to Calgary, and now those prices are coming down. Rents are coming down hard. In As a landlord in Ontario, I can see it. Rents are coming down a bit. Um, so cash flow is hard for even as rates have come down, cash flow is still hurt. Because rentals have come down, rental prices have come down.
Yeah.
So
Has the municipal governments and provincial governments pushed to sort of against Airbnb and against
yes.
has that hurt that must have hurt the condo market?
I think it's hurt the condo market a lot. I think people were getting, good rents from Airbnb, and now, it's tough to, some condo boards are not allowing it. Some City of Toronto has finally got their head around it and have enough inspectors
Yeah.
to go out and police that kind of stuff. I have anecdotally, I mean, it's been a long time, but it happened to me 2 years ago. I was Airbnb my basement after COVID only because rents were so depressed, and I got just a warning that said you've done it too much and you can't even do it on your principal residence. So I went to a full tenant, but they're around. They basically took all the marijuana inspectors and turned them into
Housing.
Airbnb housing inspectors. Yeah, but they finally caught up.
So many things I can say that I won't say.
Right.
This
So
podcast, we'll keep this clean.
we'll keep it clean, but yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. Lots of stuff to talk about. Hopefully, we're 27th, so end of next month, if we do this again, we'll have a new
Yeah.
prime minister, which will be interesting, right?
Yes.
If we do
We'll have
this,
a new prime minister. We'll
new
get
prime minister,
right.
which will be cool.
Another
Finally, I don't want to get into my political leanings. I'm going to give them both a shot. Whoever wins, we're going to have to back them because we're in for a big fight. But I lean a little bit more right. Especially with all the
Yeah.
same people.
Oddly enough, the provinces might hold a lot of power in this.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Already, you're seeing with Ford and Smith, you're seeing that they almost have a bigger voice.
Yeah.
Than the federal. Not that they have a bigger voice, but they're not insignificant in terms of the process and the dialogue. And Smith's getting invited down to Washington, and Legault hasn't even chimed in yet.
Yeah, but if he decides to, he's got a pretty big pulpit too, right? With the hydro,
sure.
and we could
For sure
come in and then I guess running pipelines out east.
Our biggest tariff against the Americans in electricity is just stopping all the 18-year-old kids from New Jersey, New York, and Vermont coming up here and to go to the bars and the strip clubs. You got to tariff their age, raise their drinking age to 25.
I haven't been out in Montreal in so long. Was it still Saint Laurent? Is it St. Catherine? What?
Yeah,
they're going to tariff everybody going to Saint Laurent.
That's it. Awesome.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Bro.
So we'll catch up. I appreciate your time. We're going to catch up again. Honestly, we're going to have a new leader.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have a mandate. I hope. One thing I do. I don't know how you feel. I hope whoever wins has a mandate, and it's not just like team up with this. I mean, I guess we've seen the NDP is kind of disintegrated. So I assume. I'm kind of thinking somebody will have a real mandate, or it's going to be more bickering.
Well, it's looking like it's going to be a minority government.
Do you think so?
I mean, that's what the polls would suggest. The polls are often wrong, so I don't know how accurate.
Well, Kamala was also supposed to win down there, and the polls were very, very wrong. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But we're going to have something to talk about, in a month's time. We'll see what happens,
and they will be right in hockey playoff season too, so we can.
Are the Habs going to make it?
For sure,
they are making it.
Not for sure, but they're now in that spot. So
they're in that spot, but they're
in that spot.
They're limping a bit now after a hot streak, right?
Why are they limping now?
A couple.
They lost one game.
Okay, well that's limping.
Another question than the Habs making the playoffs is, will the Leafs get out of the first round?
The Leafs are dynamite, buddy. They're winning it all this year. No, I don't. Who knows? It's a very hard division.
We might get a first round matchup, Habs Leafs.
Would that be awesome?
That would take the Habs, though, I think, to finish in the second wild card, though, the higher wild card, and the Leafs to win the division.
which is very hard. I mean, look at the
Both can
division.
happen.
It both could happen, but look at the division. I mean, the Leafs are, I don't know, there's 3 teams with almost the same number. Tampa's 2 points back.
Yeah,
right?
anything that those 3 teams switch all the time.
Anything can happen. It's a tough division. Anyway, I really appreciate it. Continued luck with the trading. I can't
thanks,
be,
buddy.
it can't be easy, man. You know, one
No,
day the guy comes out like it's just
uncertainty is the worst thing for markets.
Yeah. Love you too, Tex. 60TX. Love to see it. Love to see it. We'll get one day. We'll get a bunch of traders on, and we'll reminisce of the old the old floor days. That would be awesome. You know.
Yeah.
And think about it. Put your business case together for the gold card trading pit. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Next time we talk, we're gonna have a new prime minister. So, thanks again, buddy. Appreciate it.
Okay, man. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.